All right, here we go. Off we go. The champagne has smashed upon the ship of leader sight, where we will go on an adventure that's probably going to last many months towards insight, foresight, and definitely some 2020 hindsight. And I got to say right now, I'm having a moment. I'm looking at Marco Cruz in California, Renee Warius near Princeton, all these different threads, Jason Pugh down in Rutland, Vermont. All these different threads of my professional life are being woven into a fabric right before my very eyes, more than I've ever quite seen before. And so it's a wonderful thing to be in this 45-minute conversation with you folks. And to have as my first guest, a man who I've known for many, many years, John Cammack. So we're going to jump right into this, and I'm going to introduce Mr. Cammack. Hello, John.
Hello, Eric.
Good to be with you. Thank you for coming and doing this with me. What were you thinking?
Well, I'm kind of wondering what this is going to be like. Are you like the Joe Rogan, a differentiation?
We'll see what happens, John.
Yep.
John Cammack is somebody I've known for a long time. I first met the guy. I did a professional postgraduate training program at the Bowen Center for the Study of the Family in DC, which helped me form the theoretical foundation for the work I do with executives. And there's this guy in there, and mostly it was full of psychologists. And there's this guy, and there's a tall guy, kind of handsome guy. And he's like, I'm like, what's he doing here? He comes from the business world. He runs a business. He works for Rowe Price. What is he doing here? What does he think he's doing? And then turns out he became my friend, and I've known him for a long time. I've had a lot of amazing conversations with him about leadership. So when I thought about doing this, I thought, okay, I got to get Cammack on here. John Cammack was a senior executive at Rowe Price, a company many of you probably heard of in Baltimore. Hey, John, give us a sense, how big is Rowe Price?
Well, the company runs $1.2 trillion. It's got 8,000 employees, is publicly traded. I was there for 19 years. It was smaller when I left the company, but still all the attributes of managing self in a big public company with boards, executives above you, beside you, below you, trying to navigate getting things done and being aware of how the systems operate were inherent there, as they are with probably most of the companies that your clients work with. But I would view it as it was a large corporation, global corporation.
Yes. And John was a division head there and a member of the firm's operating steering committee. And I'll just say, after leaving there, John Cammack has been very active. He's an investor. He's a managing partner of King Cedar Holdings. They invest in many very interesting things. He's a future guy. He's a futurist, and also a very active community service, trying to make the world better in Baltimore. For example, chairing Safe Streets Baltimore, Venture for America Baltimore. Now, John, you just said something, managing self in a large organization. Can we follow on that a little? What are you talking about? So talk to us about your journey of managing self as a senior executive. I know you got any general comments on that to start us up?
It was an acquired, to the extent I have internalized that capacity, it was a learned capacity. Some of it may have been, inherited in the family system I grew up in, but I think a lot of it was learning how to regulate myself better. And that includes my brain and my neurological responses, my anxiety, and as I was able to reduce that, I was able to observe the system around me more effectively. And part of the toolkit with the power of that observation, which in my case came from meditation, a few other practices, but the Bowen theory that I think you shared parts of, if not all of it, with several of your clients, was a way to see not individuals, but see people as components of systems. And if I was able to take a I position in myself and change my own behavior, that would actually be a more effective method of change management than if I just went and asked other people to change. And I would say it was a gradual 2 steps forward, 1 step back development process for me. I didn't have I mean, I kind of discovered the Bowen Center, Eric, where we met, and I actually conscripted my executive training dollars at Rowe Price and went down and did the postdoc program there. So it was in lieu of executive coaching, but it served the purpose. And as I became a better leader of myself in my own ability to be calm and to observe how to respond or initiate in complex triangles, my influence at T Rowe grew, and the amount of energy necessary to manage my part of the business probably declined.
That sounds like efficiency and impact. Can you make it real? Throw a little example at me? Example of Cammack facing a situation where, okay, I can't force change here or whatever. I've got to manage me in order to get what I'm trying to achieve, accomplish.
Well, I think and by the way, we should probably let everybody know we have not prepared at all for this conversation.
Yes. In fact, John Cammack said 2 weeks ago on another call I was on with the board, he says, yes, Eric has invited me to do this, and he has assured me that there will be no rehearsal and no preparation.
So let's go for it.
He thought that was really funny.
So I think in the emergence of my leadership, there's a point in time where you've got to realize that you got to put people in place that can do the work. So you're not, and then you delegate to them, and then you don't overfunction on their behalf. You may intervene, but you're really there more for feedback. And if you got a good team, I found a really good team under me correlated to I would talk less and listen more. I mean, very strong correlation to that. And then maybe pose questions. I became more of a questioner than a director. And when you grow a group like that, I think you can move big rocks uphill. But at the same time, I think a discovery was you also had to hold people accountable. And I think as an early manager, it was a discovery that the short-term discomfort of moving somebody out of an organization who could not perform is probably the right thing for them and the right thing for the organization. And you always, as a manager or executive, have to know you have to be in relationship to your team or the people in the organization, but you have to have a set of principles that you think if you abide by those principles, the organization will be well served and actually the culture will be well served. So it was learning to go through some difficult conversations to maintain the caliber of the team and the work. And a poor performer is actually, if you leave that person in too long, is showing disrespect to the good performers, in my mind. So
interesting to hear, about the balance between that respectful, truly listening and just getting to the place where all I do is ask questions. And on the other side, respect for self, with using the authority of the position to drive change through that vehicle. I'm curious, John, when you think about your own journey of how you had to evolve yourself, Like, what were some of the things you had to let go of or grow past? You know, you had to shed ways that Cammack would operate in the world in order to
Well,
meet the challenge you face. Yeah.
okay, so there's certainly still a tendency in me to try to be a fixer.
Hmm.
And I I think a lot of my meditation practice, which is not disconnecting from the world, is trying to be in a very neutral, observing my own mind and brain and the ideas and the feelings that emerge in association with the emotional systems that I float around in, family, volunteer roles now because I'm retired, a couple of kind of venture groups I'm with. I'm always observing, is my tendency to avoid or fix, overfix.
Hmm.
And I just found that really serves me well if I can develop a nose for that, so I'm not bullshitting myself. Because if you avoid, problems compound, and then it takes more energy to unravel it, or the triangles get much more complex to solve for it at a human capital level. But if you're a fixer, you're not letting people work and learn on their own, and you just have to tolerate a certain ambiguity to let things work out or give people a chance. So I think my observation would be, as I've gotten less anxious, and that's a statement I'm making as an observation of myself from the work I've done, is given me more freedom to let things play out, and my interventions have become much more nuanced. And I have more freedom of choice. I'm not on that automatic response, fight or flight or fix or avoid. And that freedom gives you a certain range of optionality that I think serves leaders and executives well when you can kind of internalize it.
Automatic fix versus automatic avoid. That's great. And so that's like a little mantra that you carry around with you, huh? Whether I'm fixing, am I fixing or am I avoiding? Am I?
Yeah, and I kind of do a little, this is in my meditation every day. And then when I lay down to turn in, I kind of do a look over the day,
Hmm.
which generally right now is Zoom calls, right? So, um,
Hmm.
but when I'm out in the mix, like let's say you're chairman of a board and we got a big issue, and you know that issue has to be kind of be navigated. I would observe, where am I engaged, where am I deferring or deflecting, where am I over managing, and try to calibrate it back a little bit through using my observation of self and my meditations. That will just let me have a little more grace to work through it and be ready for that board meeting where the measure of a kind of, I think, graceful management of the situation is where you get to an outcome that seems sustainable, principled, and durable, and you can get there without a lot of reactivity in a group. I haven't heard myself say that before, but I think I'll take that statement with me for a while.
You laughing because it's hard to pull that off, but you could see that happening sometimes where
That's like the Moneyball thing, and I think as a leader is to be, because there's always differences
to
of
drive
opinion.
change with a diminished or minimum maximum efficiency means minimum reactivity, emotional reactivity to the change. Is that what you're saying?
You know, so kind of starting with me, because if you go in, if you put yourself in the game and you're hot-headed or you're anxious or you sense threat, you're going to act out on that a little bit. People notice either consciously or unconsciously. But if you, it's like Wayne Gretzky, he kind of knew where the puck was going. If you go into the board meeting and you're clear enough on the inner dynamics of the group, and you can understand the triangles, and you're thoughtfully de-intensifying the triangles or positions where people will be reactive, the capacity then of that group to actually think together increases. And I've come to, on my volunteer boards, more think of my leadership as, can I get this group to collectively think at a higher level? And thinking does not mean you avoid disagreement. In fact, you welcome dissent, but you welcome it in a way that it is brought forth with respect. And because you define the container of the discussion as, we owe it to ourselves to come to the highest order of thinking, and we need to be collectively bringing our best capacity to this issue. We're fiduciaries and it deserves our time. And that sounds a little too formalized, but essentially that's what is going on within me, with me being the one that has to prepare myself to be the most neutral agent. Because again, I don't view as a leader that it's my decision to make. It's for me to facilitate the group to come to something they will stand behind, and it will serve the test of time as a wise decision.
John, we're 15 minutes into this, the maiden voyage of leader sight. And I just want to pause for a second before I'm going to ask you a question in a sec, which is going to be, give me some 2020 hindsight. Tell me about one of the biggest mistakes. And maybe even we could touch on typical mistakes that you think younger leaders, you mentored a lot of them. What are some of the typical? But before we do that, I just want to share my screen for a sec here and show you a little bit about where this boat is going. In 2 weeks, I'm going to have my friend, mentor, colleague, Leslie Fox, who co-founded and ran Care Communications in Chicago, Illinois, which is a very successful health information services business. She's the author of this book, Leading a Business in Anxious Times. So that's coming up in 2 weeks. We're going to just keep rolling and iterating along with this thing. I'm sure I'll learn a lot along the way. And then you can see that we got a few others lined up here, a CEO of a credit union and founder of an extremely interesting entrepreneurial business in Rochester, New York, Ben Pearson. Some of you may recognize your own faces on this picture. This gives you an image of what this Leader Sight program is going to be about, calling forth from, one of the things I absolutely love about my work is that I get to hang out with wise people. And so when this idea popped up, oh my gosh, I had this treasure trove of wise people. I can get them onto these Zoom calls and we can make it a community conversation. And I do want to also mention that by 4:15 is when we're Eastern time is when we're going to stop. And before that happens, I'm going to experiment with giving you the opportunity to go into a breakout room and just talking with another person, thinking out loud with another person about leadership, about some of the ideas that we're kicking around here. I find it's very helpful for people to have the opportunity to think about leadership, just simply thinking about it, giving people the space to do that. And people often do their best learning by talking and just experimenting with their ideas. So, Cammack, 2020 hindsight. Talk to me. What do you think about that?
Well,
talk to the younger Cammack and say, guess what? You better avoid this one because it's coming your way.
You mean the knucklehead Cammack?
Yeah, the one who
that
like,
I barely keep.
John, don't do this.
So, I mean, I'll just give you some of the classics. And I'm such a good case study in this. As a younger guy, I presumed facts and data would always convey decisions. How's that for a good one? You know, rather than how those facts will be internalized by people, and will they see it as an opportunity or a threat? So I had to learn how to flex information or social styles based on the decision preferences. Somebody more of a data person or an amiable person. Do they just want to get to the bottom line and they don't want a lot of detail? So I wasn't good on reading people. I had to learn how to be a little more sophisticated in communication flexibility. I
What's the
think
key
as
to
a,
that? What's the key to, how do you learn to do that? I love this point. The
you learn through
world does
failing.
not run on logic. Is that what you're trying to say, John Cammack?
Come on,
In order
you
to
learn through the
influence
small
hearts and
hard knocks
minds,
that, yeah, that's something that makes eminent sense to you and should to other people. They don't respond the way you do, so you got to begin to do trial and error. And then T Rowe was very rich in coaches. It really was a benefit to me certain points in my career. So communication flexibility. Every once in a while, as a younger manager turning into an executive, I would not read the triangles right, and I would not know, and I would leave somebody out.
tell them what a triangle is.
A triangle is where there's another person, like there's Eric and me right now, but there could be any of you could be in a triangle with Eric on any issue because you got a relationship with Eric and potentially me where we all have skin in the game around that issue.
You mean like
So,
where I was sort of complaining about you to somebody?
yeah, that could be it. You didn't like the idea that Cammack brought because you didn't think it was well developed, and that other person has heard from you, but I may not understand exactly the interplay between the two of you, and it creates a certain blindness. And I think the art of it is to be aware of where those triangles exist before an issue emerges that could be activated by an issue or an initiative around change management, and know of that triangle, like Eric and the other guy that Eric was criticizing me about. Who do I begin with? who do you have the first conversation with? Or do I get tricky and I tell the other guy, it's interesting, Eric has a good perspective on this issue, but I'd like you to go learn more about it from Eric. See what, or the other way around, I ask Eric to go talk to the other guy. So it's maneuverability around these units of 3 people that I think are kind of the DNA of organizations and in a way, even families. And it's the more you have an awareness of the pre-existence of triangles before you begin to initiate a change management, and you can navigate successfully, the less you minimize sabotage of the change you're proposing.
Run that by me one more time now.
The more you can understand the triangles in an organization and how they will interlock when they perceive threat or opportunity or just potential change with uncertainty, and you have the flexibility in yourself to know how to interplay with the different people in those triangles, the less you risk that those triangles will align against your idea or you.
Wow. Nimble in the alliances, because alliances are so emotional. Human beings were hardwired. We want the inside spot, and we're hardwired to be very reactive when we find out 2 people are talking about us. If you were just talking about a situation where you kind of know that Eric Thompson is saying some negative things about John Cammack to somebody else, and how do you handle that in a skillful way? Interesting idea that you might go to one and say, Eric's got great ideas. I think you should learn more. In other words, not opposing being the outsider, but dancing with being the outsider, nimbly moving with it. Thinking about all the people who, people who manage wealth or financial services people who have to deal with the husband and the wife. This is another classic triangle. But yeah, so flexibility in alliances increases influence, according to John Cammack, is what I'm hearing here.
And trying to be neutral where even if there is criticism of the idea or of me as in my capacity to deliver the concept, the idea, the proposal, we're going to do this next, or we're thinking of doing this.
Yeah.
Being neutral is an incredible, be neutral in yourself where, and I'm saying this, and I don't want anybody on this call to think that, I'm going to say it, but before I say, I'm going to say, this is still I am a big work in progress on this. Not taking the bait is a hard thing, right?
What does it mean to be neutral?
I mean, being neutral, you can say it, man, but
What does it mean?
get there, Mickey Mantle got there hitting, and maybe somebody gets there being neutral in management, and they're kind of on the same level. But some people are better at it than others, and it gives you an incredible advantage as a leader, because you can't get thrown off your game even when other people are. And ultimately, the calmest observer can manage to an outcome, in some cases, even if you don't have the most positional power in the situation. This is a great conversation. Is the value in your work, Eric, that you see in people have a high degree of positional power, but a low degree of presence. And I view presence as a calm ability to stay in eye positions, versus somebody has a high degree of presence, but not the positional power. In the long run, who wins the battle of, or not the battle, but who has more influence in organizations in the long run?
I think it's you've pointed to the high bar of being able to be neutral, which doesn't mean passive, but poised, balanced amidst intense alliances that are always going around, where you're dealing with egos. And it's very interesting to think of that as one of the components of influence. This is sort of key component is what you're describing.
And there was a book when I was quite young, I think it was called The Peters Principle. It is, you can get promoted one level beyond your capacity. And my observation in my career trajectory, that it did plateau out at T Rowe, pretty close to the top, but not at the top, is with every promotion, the potential intensity in the triangles would increase, right? So, because the table stakes for decisions, the people around you, for their careers, for their bottom lines, for resource allocation, all get amped up. So, so I'm now aware when I take on a board role or volunteer role, what I kind of try to figure out what the culture of that organization is in the triangles, because if you're not internally prepared for this and you get over promoted, I do think it will begin to lead to a form of burnout, or your reactivity over time will go up, because if you don't have the mechanism, or you don't have a couple of direct reports that are really good at doing this in conjunction with you, you run the risk of kind of putting yourself in a tough situation unless you can continue to develop this capacity.
I'm looking at this gallery of wonderful faces, and some of them I'm just seeing names, but welcome you to share your video too, to see the faces, because this is like a lot of old friends here for me. And most of these people, actually, the majority of people on this call have been through my leadership development course, Leading by Managing Self. So some of the concepts that John's talking about, triangles, eye positions, neutrality, are all baked into that course. So for most of you, it's familiar. Some of you might be hearing terms that are a little different. But if we just stick to the point of alliances intensify, the emotionality of alliances intensify, the more positional authority you have, which is how I'd translate what John just said. And that the ability to skillfully manage those alliance intensities is a feature of a highly influential senior executive person, highly influential person in life. Cammack, I want to ask you to talk a little bit about family as I use this in my teaching, and it comes out of Bowen theory. Family is an incredible place to study the art of leadership, to be better at leading, to learn about leading. I know that you are a person who has been extremely thoughtful on your journey of what it means to be a contributor to the family. Leadership, of course, not meaning a position within a hierarchy, but behavior that contributes to the success of the group. And I want to ask you to say a word about that. And then after John does that, I'm going to do this experiment, and I hope you'll bear with me of trying to put you into groups of 3 for 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, and give you a chance not to meet each other and take a long time with introductions, but just to have each person have about 1 minute to say, this is what he was talking about got me thinking about. And that process of speaking about what it got you thinking about, you'll be integrating the conversation and integrating the experience, and then pull people back and maybe give folks a chance to ask questions or share observations with John. So many people have said, I don't know about this breakout thing, but I've been doing this with my other show for Vermont Center for Family Studies. And inevitably people say, you know what, that was actually really valuable. So we're going to do that in a moment as we're heading into the final home stretch of our 45 minutes. So Cammack, talk to me about family, the family leadership journey. You got some 2020 hindsight for us on that one, Cammack?
Sure do. First, I want to acknowledge my wife Kimberly is on the call, and my son Henry, and that's very special for me. Well, I went into the Bowen work where I met Eric thinking I needed to get better at change management. Little did I know it was really talking about my management of self, and that the real work was in family. So, and I certainly needed it. I think I overfunctioned in work and underfunctioned in my home as kind of a starting point. This is around 2002, 2003. And I had to begin to observe self in my functioning in the triangles in my home, which were not in balance, I think, between, we had 2 sons, one on the call, Henry, and another one, Walker. It was kind of different dynamics between Kimberly, Henry, Walker, and myself. And those needed, it took time it wasn't dealing with the issue directly, it was dealing a little bit with the relationship, my presence as a member of the household and with Kimberly, and controlling my reactivity more and just becoming more available. I would say more of the work in Bowen took place in my role as a father and husband than it did as an executive at T. Rowe. And some of the things I had to do were different ways of regulating myself in the home than in the office. I think I'll probably stop there, other than to say it was an essential work, I think, to become a more available member of the family, and work continues.
John, it's the art of presence, right? You touched on that beautiful word, presence, which is such a deep art. And that's very interesting to hear about your journey to lean into presence, being more present in the home. Love it. All right, folks. So I'm going to bear with me now. We're going to use the Zoom technology, and this is going to be about a 4-minute breakout room. So this is going to be a simple process where you're going to, again, I want you to consider skip the introductions. So when you get into your breakout room, just someone is going to have to just start by saying, you know what, let me give you 1 minute on what I'm thinking, and then stop and listen. Somebody else will take the ball. You'll be either with 2 people or 3, and just talk what you're thinking about. And it's going to be very brief, just a 4-minute breakout room. And then we'll come back and have a little interaction to close this meeting out. So Zoom is going to do this for us. You can leave your breakout room if you want to. I'll be here in the main room. I might be go visiting breakout rooms, but you do have that functionality in Zoom to leave your breakout room. So here we go. Folks, we're in our last 4 minutes of the maiden voyage of Leader's Sight with John Cammack. I must say it is delightful to see your faces, people. There's a lot of people who I have a lot of respect for on this call, including Brian Culver from Burlington, Vermont, Ted Castle from Burlington, Vermont, president of Rhino Foods and a B Corp master. Maybe I need to get Ted Castle on this call talking about B Corp. We have a few minutes left. Can I get one of you just unmute and give us a few thoughts, what you're taking away here, or what got stimulated for you? Who would like to do that?
Hey, Eric, Jason, I'll just
Hey,
share.
Jason, thank you. Yeah.
You know, instead of imposing my will on others, which is the use of the position, right, not the influence. You don't always think about it that way, but to change the way I'm thinking about the, whatever it is I got that one planted. That one struck home. So
Thank you, Jason.
yeah, thanks.
Can I have another? Somebody else want to?
Sure, I'll jump in. So,
Manthan, good to see you, Manthan Gandhi.
thanks, Eric. So Renee and I were speaking about the roles that we play within our family dynamics, and I have a 3.5-year-old, and conversation really got me thinking, because at the very basic level, he's absorbing everything that I do, my wife does. So what are the I statements that I can employ to model the behaviors for him to have a healthy relation to not getting a toy he wants? Share it. Like, same things that happen at the corporate level, not getting the project I wanted or the staff member I wanted, boiled down at the fundamental levels of I want, I need, I can't have. And so, yeah, it's really refocused and brought me back to the tools.
The early game of parenting is so full of opportunities to discover how to deal with that which you cannot control, the mind of your child. And it does not end. We're in our last minute here. So, boy, we could go on with these topics. I have an undying fascination with such topics. And quick and dirty, but we'll be back here again in 2 weeks with my guest, Leslie Fox, who's on the call. Hi, Leslie. You want to say a word? What was your experience of this meeting? I'm really looking forward to talking to you.
Well, thank you, Eric. I'm looking forward to it too. And I want to thank John. I mean, that was a really great way of describing all of the things that I think I've experienced as well, as we all have. I mean, my biggest takeaway is, once again, that there's no better laboratory for practicing leadership than our families. And it does overflow into our work lives then, if we're really conscientious about it. And I love the way he interwove the value of his meditation practice to be able to observe himself. And I used to think about I'd have like these little out-of-body experiences when I was learning Bowen theory, when I think about, oh, I just did that again. I didn't want to do that. But then over time, how you can begin to think in the moment, I don't want to do this. And it's just such a journey, and it's a long process. And I was thrilled to hear about somebody else's journey. Thank you, John. Thank you, Eric, for pulling this all together.
All right, to be continued in 2 weeks with Leslie Fox. I'd be delighted to see you guys. Hey, shoot me an email, strengths and weaknesses of this. I need to iterate. This is going to be an agile process. It's going to evolve. So please shoot me a quick, don't overthink it, strengths and weaknesses. And now I invite you, we'll close the meeting officially. I'm going to hang out here for a few minutes, similar to if we were in a meeting and somebody feels like, oh, let me go ask Eric a question or whatever, or chat a little, I will be available to do that. But please don't feel obliged to stay. The meeting is officially ended. I'm going to let people go on time every single one of these leader site meetings. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks a lot.